Yeah.
Hello?
There you go. Is it working? Yeah, it sounds like it.
Perfect. Yeah, it's all. Yeah. All right, good morning. I am Deputy Jordan Alejandro with the Genesee County Sheriff's Office, and I am the school resource officer at Oakfield, Alabama, and I've been there for 2 years now. So,
My name is Miah Stevens. I'm the school resource officer at Batavia. I currently am stationed at the middle school, Robert Morris and Jackson, which are our two youngest schools.
And I'm Youth Detective Eric Hill. I work with the Batavia Police Department, and unfortunately, I'm the old guy up here. I've been here for almost 18 years now. So, yeah, right.
all right, so this morning we're going to talk about bullying in schools and the impact it has on students. I'm going to start with kind of a basic overview of just what bullying is, because I think there's a big misconception between bullying and just everyday conflict. And that's one of the struggles I think as school resource officers and school personnel we have, is trying to explain to kids what bullying is versus just what is a normal conflict, a normal interaction between people. So we're going to start off with some of our objectives here. So define what bullying is, discuss some current trends. Cyberbullying and avoidance is something that I see more frequently, and I think we'll see even more frequently, unfortunately, in the future, is you're not seeing the everyday knock a kid's books out of his hands like you see depicted in the older movies or, when we were in school. Discuss the impact bullying has on today's students, the increased need for mental health, attendance issues, school violence in general, a big topic that everyone seems to see is the active shooter or the school shooter situation, and just how bullying can tie into that. Discuss the difficulty students face escaping bullying and constant access to their peers. We'll get a little bit further into that, and then discuss the difficulty school face combating bullying and propose some proactive steps in prevention. So what is bullying? Bullying is defined as unwanted aggressive behavior among school-age children that involves real or perceived power imbalances, and that's huge. There doesn't always have to be a real discrepancy. Sometimes it is just a perception. I think this person has a little bit more power than I do, or more influence, more popularity, and has the potential to be repeated over time. And that's something that's different than that you and I have a disagreement, we get into an altercation and it's over with. It's repeated over time, or can be. And both kids who are bullied or do the bullying may have some serious lasting problems. Okay. In order to be considered bullying, the behavior must be aggressive and include an imbalance of power. So kids have a significantly larger physical strength, or they believe they do. They're significantly better at sports or more socially active, those kind of things. And it's repetition. Bullying behaviors happen more than once, and they have the potential to happen more than once. Okay, so it is not just that I don't like what you said, so we're fighting. And then bullying includes actions such as making threats, spreading rumors, attacking someone, physical or verbal, and excluding someone from a group on purpose. And that's one I see more frequently than not, is the exclusion portion. Kids today are so plugged into their status, their social media status, likes, people sharing things, people viewing what they're posting, that if you choose to avoid them, it's almost more detrimental than physically doing something to them. They stew on it. Why did I only get 5 likes? Oh, this person must have said this about me. So this is what I see working with our school counselors and our school social worker all the time. A lot of kids are concerned with this type of behavior. I don't know if you're seeing similar.
Yeah, I'd like to just add, going into what he said about oh my goodness, I just lost my train of thought. Apologize. The excluding, we had a case actually earlier in the year that we had one of our more serious cases. The student was actually terrified of going back to school because he was going to be canceled. And to a middle schooler, to us, we're like, well, what does being canceled mean? I mean, can I be canceled? Does that mean I get a day off?
Yeah.
Just kidding. But to this student, when he was saying, he was actually afraid of being canceled because when he went into school, he said it's basically social suicide. you are completely excluded from your groups. And, we talked about the isolation during the elder abuse, but in schools, I feel like with kids and peer pressure, it almost has a bigger impact. I would say the imbalance of power, that's really a huge one. I think in my school, I know Deputy Alejandro and I were talking earlier, he doesn't see as much of the physical fights. We have had some more physical fights. It's actually after Christmas, it seems like they skyrocketed. I don't know if the kids just got hyped up or something, but we are seeing that more. And I've actually had people reach out to me wondering what they can do, because they do have kids that have actually been physically attacked on the other side of things.
So I think that speaks volumes to the difference in school sizes too, being in the city of Batavia, being in Oakfield, Alabama, Byron Burgeon, I have kids there, smaller class sizes. When speaking with those SROs, we're not seeing as much physical violence as we are this social bullying. But when you get to the larger schools, it is an issue. So the types of bullying are verbal bullying, teasing, name calling, inappropriate comments, taunting, and threats. That's kind of what I grew up with. Going to school in the 90s and the 2000s before the internet and everybody having cell phones. That's how you bullied. Social bullying, hurting someone's reputation or relationships. And this is what I see more frequently. Leaving someone out on purpose and avoidance is just what we talked about. This method of bullying has a significant impact on today's students because children have a strong desire and need to feel included. This is what I have kids tell me all the time, that they go home and the person that used to be in their Snapchat group is not messaging them anymore. And every kid's on Snapchat and every kid's in some sort of group with 50 other kids. And they don't shy away from, if you're the hot topic right now, they'll talk about you in a group that they know you're included. And then you have 40 people doing it all at once. So when I was in school, if I didn't like someone or somebody didn't like me, they'd have to say something to you in person, or they'd have to call your house phone. I'd have to get on the internet and hope the dial-up worked, and I was signed into AOL. All those things had to happen for me to be bullied. Nowadays, they have their cell phones, they have their Chromebooks, they're obsessed with checking the status of things. If you want to punish a kid in today's day and age, take their phone away, take them off of social media. So they're so in tune with this. The social bullying is what most of the kids are complaining about, at least at my school. Then there's the classic physical bullying.
Can I interject real quick? I want to add something in with the Snapchat, because speaking of the Snapchat and the social bullying, one of the things that we're trying to teach with kids is really helping them to avoid these situations altogether. Like, what can you do to stop yourself from being bullied in these situations? What can you do to remove yourself from the situation? And I actually had a case with Snapchat last year where I even tested it out myself, is, I always ask the kids first thing, did you block that person? Most of the time they say, well, no. So then we tell them, okay, well, can you block them? So they do. And even though they have that person blocked, we've actually been able to figure out that any other person who's friends with that person, they can create a group chat message with the person that they have blocked. So really, we have noticed too, a lot of our kids that we would call kind of on the fringe, they're not really involved in the situation, but they are friends with either the person who's being bullied or the person who is doing the bullying. And they will actually kind of work with the bully to bring that student back in. If the three of us are in a group chat and, Detective Hill's pretty intimidating, so I'm the one bullying Detective Hill, Sorry. So I'm going to say I'm bullying Detective Hill, and he's really intimidating, but on the inside, he's just a super sensitive, sweet guy, and he doesn't want a problem with anybody. So he blocks me. I'm now friends with Deputy Alejandro. He can now create a group chat with the three of us to bring him back in. So now I'm exposed to that, or he's exposed to the bully again. And it happens way more often than not. I know.
Yeah.
What can I say? It's what I'm known for.
Yeah. The other thing with Snapchat that can be difficult for kids, and kids love Snapchat, is you can change your username, not your actual how you signed up for your account, but your username can change whenever you want. So if I want to avoid Deputy or Miah Stevens, Officer Stevens, I can, look out for her name. But if she changes it the next day to something completely different, unless I've blocked that profile, I can't get away from it. And kids know that. Then there's, of course, the physical bullying, like I said, the hitting, the pushing, the stealing and breaking. I don't see as much of the hitting and pushing as much as the stealing and breaking, taking things from kids. Maybe they have something on their desk, their Chromebook, and I want to move it across the room. So I'm not actually stealing it as much as I'm just making it inconvenience to exist in class with that person.
That's a spot I'd like to jump in. So ultimately, back before we had SROs, verbal bullying and that kind of stuff, it kind of fell on me to take care of. I love these guys because they handle all that stuff. And ultimately the school districts actually have a little bit more latitude in regards to that type of bullying than we do on the law enforcement side. The one area that we can get involved in is actually the physical bullying. And that's when these guys end up pulling me in and then Tracy, I see her right back there. And then me and Tracy, she works with probation. She's the juvenile officer there. We kind of work together to bring about a good resolution to that. So ultimately these guys are really the workhorses right now, which is great for me. Because I get a little bit of a reprieve on handling some of this, but I'm still involved in the process. Even sometimes when there isn't a physical aspect to it, I have parents call me all the time and they're like, hey, little Jimmy or little Susie's are getting bullied. Like, what are some avenues that I can go down? And that's when I bring out, pins with Tracy. And I also tell them to reach out to the SROs because our SROs are just a valuable resource to have on multitude of levels, multitude.
Thank you. So this is just some statistics I was able to pull up in regards to bullying. And I think they do hold true from my experiences. You are seeing a large amount of bullying taking place 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, typically among our female students, and it does have a higher rate in rural schools. So Genesee County, we do fit into this narrative here, rural schools, 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. And if I had to gauge how many times I speak to students at schools, I would say it's typically that 6th, 7th, and 8th grade girl who's having these conflicts right now with bullying. We do see it in the senior high, but significantly less. There are more one-offs there. In the middle school, while kids are trying to figure themselves out, figure out what group they fall into, that's where you see that gang mentality of, we're against them. And that's that social bullying or that isolation where I'm not going to include these people right now because they're not within our groups. And when you have class sizes like we do at 60 kids in a grade, and, if it's 30 females, 50 or 30 males, you can be extremely isolated in a very small space if they determine that you're not there. Yep. Oh, I don't think I can take the purple off. As far as the graph, no, I can't. I can kind of break it down for you if you'd like. So it's essentially saying that in the 2019 survey of students ages 12 to 18, males were approximately 19% reported that they had experienced some form of bullying. Females were, I believe, just under 30%, with the primary race or ethnicity being students who identify as mixed race or more than one race, followed by white females next. The grade levels, it's pretty much tied at around 30% with 6th, 7th, and 8th graders, followed by, and you can see until you hit that junior level, 11th grade, it's really primarily in the middle school ages. As far as schools, city, suburban, and town schools tend to be the same. Rural schools experience a significant increase, and then public and private is pretty much even. So it doesn't necessarily matter whether you go to Notre Dame or Oakville, Alabama. It seems about the same. Did that help? So next topic is cyberbullying, and this is what I kind of lump in with social bullying. Cyberbullying is bullying that takes place over digital services like cell phones, computers, and tablets, and everybody has them. And when I do the internet safety presentations for the school, I'll ask kids, how many of you have a cell phone or a tablet? Raise their hand. How many of you have a second device, a cell phone or a tablet? They all raise their hand. So not only do they have one form of electronic, they oftentimes have two, which can help them with bullying, right? Because If I'm trying to get away with something, I might not do it on my cell phone that mom and dad are checking. I'll do it on the school computer because that's only going to flag it if it's a breach of their security or vice versa. So they might use both mediums or even school emails because I don't have this person's number and I don't know their Snapchat, but I can find them on the directory. So they can reach people in multiple ways. This includes sending, posting, or sharing negative, harmful, false, or mean content about somebody else. A lot of times the bullying is indirect. I was already talked to at school for saying something mean to you. So I know I can't say something directly to you, but I'm going to go on my Snapchat story and I'm going to make a vague post that's completely about you, that you know will be about you, that you'll see, and so will everybody else in our class. And then when the school asks me about it, I can say, well, I didn't do it. I was just talking in general. I was just venting frustration. So then it's very hard to combat sometimes, because if they're not saying, I don't like John or I don't like Sue, what do? You have to kind of talk to them about just being good human beings at that case. Some cyberbullying crosses the line into unlawful criminal behavior, and that's that aggravated harassment, where the law has actually stated that, harassment through electronic media or telephonic presence in those is an aggravated harassment instead of just a regular harassment. So if you've consistently been texting me and I've blocked your number and I've told you to stop and you keep going through different areas, it can get into a criminal aspect with aggravated harassment, because the government, in my opinion, believed that it's more difficult for you to escape those types of harassment or those types of bullying, right? I can show up to your house, but you can call the police and get me out. I can't necessarily disconnect from the world. I need my computer to work. I need my cell phone. So because of that, there is a charge that you can do if it goes criminal. Most of the time, schools will try to handle that in-house and help kids mediate that.
I'd like to jump in here as well. So harassment, the actual harassment section is a violation level offense. And in New York State, kids 15 and under, those are our juveniles, they are not allowed to be charged with violation level offenses in New York. So this aggravated harassment one is actually a good thing for us because this is a misdemeanor. So that means that we can file a petition on it, which means that I can get it in with Tracy and or family court. So that's where New York State has helped us. There are other avenues that we can take with those juveniles that commit violation level offenses, but there's certain things that we have to reach in order to get it there. One of those things would be youth court, which is a court that's actually run by kids, and it's actually a New York State recognized court. They can actually put out like restitution. They can recommend mental health, community service, and like letters of apology and stuff like that. So just a little side note there, where sometimes our hands are tied in regards to what we can do for those harassment level offenses.
So one, we all know what different forms of electronic media there are: social media, Facebook, Instagram. There are ways of reporting bullying behavior on those things. They have to investigate the post. They may remove it. It doesn't necessarily remove the user though. They'll create new Facebooks, new Snapchats, new Instagrams. They'll have friends do it. But online gaming is another huge one where, so you're maybe not into social media, but you love playing Call of Duty or you love playing Madden online. Kids will bully each other within those groups. And a lot of kids put a lot of weight in how good they are at these games. So next thing you know, you wouldn't believe how many kids, it's a detriment to them when the people are talking about at school how terrible they are at Call of Duty or how terrible they are at Madden. That is bullying to them. It's repeated and it matters to them. So although for, my generation, it might not be nearly as important to how good you were at PlayStation, for some of these kids, they put a lot of time and effort in this. They aspire to be professional gamers. That's something they can do nowadays. So there's a million different avenues, and I do not envy some of today's kids because they put so much weight in these electronic devices. So the difficulties regarding cyberbullying and cyberbullying prevention is it can be anonymous, right? I can use a screen name, a made up profile. All you need is a new email address and you can get a different Yahoo, Gmail, or whatever you need. It's hard to track the source as well. So if I post something about someone else and then I immediately delete it, but someone screenshots it and then shares it all over, but they just cut off who the initial poster was, they can say it wasn't me. It was just a screenshot. We just recently dealt with something very similar. It got screenshotted from one person, 5 people later, we're trying to track who the original source was. They can reach a number of people quickly. If you want to see how fast text messages and chat groups go, call one kid down to the office to ask him a question. Within 2 seconds, 100 kids knew that that kid was down in the office and what question they were being asked. It can be done over a number of different applications. We've talked about that, Chromebooks, text messaging. It can be difficult to remove the material once it's sent. This is something that unfortunately we have to deal with when it regards sexting or inappropriate photos being sent. I sent it to my boyfriend. He would never share it with anybody. Well, he sent it to every one of his friends and they all screenshotted it. And you might know that your boyfriend didn't screenshot it, but what was stopping him from taking his old cell phone that he doesn't use anymore and taking a picture of the screen? So one of the things kids tell me with Snapchat a lot is that they like it because if the person screenshots it, they know they did it. And I say, okay, what does that do for you that you know they took a screenshot of it? All it does is add to your anxiety because now you know they have a picture of it. So are you then going to go tell your parent or trusted adult that this person has a copy of a photo you shouldn't have sent in the first place? No. So they don't do that. And then they sit there and they hope that it doesn't come back around. And when it does, then we're dealing with it at school or through the sheriff's office or through Batavia Police Department because it inevitably does, right? Because that's why they call it first love or high school crushes, because it ends. And then it ends badly sometimes, unfortunately. I'm trying to explain to kids that people aren't stupid. I can take a photo of your screen with my phone and you'll never know that I had it. And then they'll send it around. Oftentimes it's difficult for adults to notice, right? So teachers often say they didn't see the bullying happening because if it's happening through cell phones or on the Chromebook, there's nothing audible to see. So now you're looking for behaviors. And if I have 20 people in my classroom that are all sitting there and I'm looking to see if they're doing work, am I also looking to see their facial expressions because maybe they got a message that they didn't like or they weren't prepared to receive? No, you're not. So teachers oftentimes can't see it even happening. So when the principals or myself ask them, did you notice anything? They're saying it's happening in your class. I didn't. Sorry.
Our kids too are very well versed in knowing exactly what programs we have on the school computer and how to avoid them. I just did a digital evidence lesson for some 7th graders. They're working on digital footprints and, just internet safety. And throughout the course, I would ask them like, well, what does the school have to help monitor your computers? Go Guardian, iBoss, they could tell me every single feature their school computer had, and they know how to get around it. They get mad because Go Guardian means they can't play games during class because their teacher can go off and shut it off. But they also know that the iBoss means they can't go on those websites, but they know how to get around to those websites that currently haven't been blocked yet. They're very well versed. So, they know which avenues we have to kind of help monitor that, but they know how to get around them.
Yeah. And the one thing to add to this whole cyberbullying thing, and like I said, that avoidance tactic is if I know the school is going to yell at me for bullying, right? Because we have DASA, we have to follow through, we have to make sure we investigate on bullying complaints. So I don't want to be direct with you. What would most of us rather if someone has an issue with us? They always say it to my face, tell me what you're thinking. These kids don't get that benefit because the other kids don't want to get in trouble. So there's nothing being said to their face. That's all behind their back. And then every time they walk around the halls and they see someone laugh or someone do anything, it's about them. They're very me-centric. I don't know if that's a word, but I'm using it. They're very focused on what's happening to them, and to them, all eyes are on me because they are looking for those likes. They're looking for that attention. It's human nature to want to be liked. And we talk about the hierarchy of needs sometimes, food, love, clothing, shelter. Some of these kids are struggling for that at home in any facet. So then they're looking for their peers to provide that to them. And when it doesn't happen, it's detrimental. So the impact of bullying on students, kids who are bullied can experience negative physical, social, emotional, academic, and mental health issues, and kids who are bullied are more likely to experience depression and anxiety. I'm sure anybody who works in mental health or in a school sees the level of depression and anxiety that our kids have nowadays. Increased feeling of sadness, loneliness, changes in sleep and eating patterns. We have a number of kids who choose not to eat in the lunchroom sometimes. I just don't want to eat. I just don't like eating in front of my peers. I'd rather have another study hall. Oftentimes it's not that they're just not hungry, it's they're using that because they don't feel good about themselves or they're being bullied in other ways. Loss of interest in activities. These are things we can pick up on as parents, as police officers. My kid loved softball. Everything was about softball. Then one day they just stopped playing. That's odd. We can't just ignore those types of behaviors. These issues often don't go away. We talk about trauma and being informed of people's traumas. These are traumatic events for them. Everyone's trauma is different. It doesn't have to be car accidents or these crazy events for it to cause a trauma scar for some of these kids. Health complaints. Are these kids constantly in the nurse's office and saying, my stomach doesn't feel, undisclosed pain? We talk about, I can't sleep, my stomach hurts. Are they self-medicating? Those kind of things. Decreased academic achievement. They had 90s and 80s. Is the curriculum got harder, or is there something else going around? And they're more likely to miss or skip school. We see that truancy. Someone had great attendance in the first marking period. Next thing you know, something happens and they're not coming to school anymore. What do we do as a school? We can do home visits. We can, kind of reach out, but sometimes it doesn't matter how many times an adult reaches out and says it's going to be okay. We want you to be back there. They need to see it from their peers. And if they're not getting it, it could be bullying. So some additional impact, oftentimes the peer group, because if they're watching their friend be bullied, it's, am I next? So they might also think that they're in trouble. They have increased use of tobacco or alcohol or drugs, that self-medication, have increased mental health problems, including depression or anxiety, and they may skip school also. If my friend's being bullied and I'm not doing anything to stop it, but I'm also not supporting it, am I just next? They don't know. And then the risk of suicide or self-harm. And this is big. So although bullying can be a contributing factor to suicidal ideations, bullying alone is not the cause. Those who are bullied without that solid support structure at home, though, do have a higher rate of suicidal ideations or suicide attempts. So I try to encourage teachers or the guidance counselors or school staff to take a look at maybe some other factors. It's not just academic. What are they going home to when they show concern? Because we do have teachers sometimes bring up concerns. This person's not acting the same. Okay, so now we have to kind of take it back and say, is it just at school, or are they going home to alcoholic parents, maybe drug addiction, maybe they don't know where they're sleeping. One night they're on somebody's couch. They're hopping around, so they don't have that support structure. Those are someone, not only are they at risk for mental health issues, but also that suicidal ideations. You might want to do your pre-screenings or make sure they're working with the guidance counselors. Or our school is lucky enough to have a mental health professional who comes to our school once a week, so that helps. And the other thing is 15% of participating adults or adolescents reported engaging in self-harm during the last year. We see a lot of cutting. Doesn't necessarily mean they want to commit suicide, but they use cutting or that pain sensation as a way to kind of vent their frustrations. And it's the risk of self-harm is 6 times higher for bully victims and 5 times higher for bullied, 3 times higher for the bullies themselves, and compared to somebody who just says they have a good experience. So even the bullies have something going on typically at home that they're venting this frustration out in other ways.
I just wanted to add in a piece about the bystanders, because one thing that I've noticed a lot, I talked about the fringe, and that's kind of what I would consider the same thing. A lot of these situations that we're dealing with, it always usually stems from another incident. And almost every single time it's a part of the friend group. So usually like these 2 students will be having an issue, and it almost always goes back to, well, we were friends at one point, but then something happened, and now it goes, now it's circling back, and it can start to focus on different people depending on who the conflict is happening around.
So one of the big topics is always school shootings, these mass acts of violence. So I wanted to include this. I've gone to a number of different threat assessment training specific to school violence being an SRO. So I wanted to bring some of that here. So in comparison with the number of children bullied, only a very small number of bullied children retaliate through extreme violent measures. I want to make sure everyone understands that these events you see on the news are terrible and tragic. The way the news portrays them is that it's happening daily, every day, all across schools. They are still rare that these mass acts of violence take place, but there is some correlation between bullying. But not every student who is bullied or depressed or has mental health issues is going to commit mass violence, okay? So in a study, 12 out of 15 school shooters throughout the 90s had a history of being bullied. So that just tells you it could be a contributing factor. And then per a 2021 study released by the United States Secret Service, 44% of perpetrators reported being bullied at one point in time. So almost 50% of all the perpetrators reported being bullied. Bullying may be a contributing factor in the creation of grievances. but it would not be the exclusive reason. And why I included this chart is this is what they call a pathway to violence. That's created by the United States Secret Service. It's pretty much recognized universally as the steps that every perpetrator takes. So the first one is grievance. What that means is I've decided that I have some sort of axe to grind against one group or another. So what bullying can do is create that grievance. But a grievance alone is not enough to commit an act of violence. They would need to escalate up that path to ideation, which is I'm accepting violence is a logical and reasonable solution to solve my grievance. Okay. And then you get to research and planning. Those people tend to be researching past experiences. They idolize past school shooters, Columbine, Stoneman Douglas, those kind of things. They begin preparing, gathering resources, goods. I'm going to Dick's. I'm going to start getting my ammo or those kind of things. They create what they call a breach, which we saw with the top shooter the day before, where he went to the store to kind of gauge what it looks like, points of access, security risks, and then the attack itself. Breach and attack can happen in the same day. It can happen within the same few minutes, right? It doesn't have to be separated. But what we do as a school is try to prevent these creations of grievances. That doesn't mean every day is great. It doesn't mean that every kid has the best day ever and no one ever made fun of them and they've never been bullied, but it means we want to make sure we stop it before it creates that like hit in their stomach that they can't shake, that every day is miserable. And then they talk about the different forms of bullying, and there it goes to just show you 44% said that they were bullied in one way or another. Okay. So some detection and warning signs in regards to bullying, and we kind of went through this, is unexplainable injuries. Maybe right before gym class, their knee hurts or their ankle's really bothering them. Their wrist is acting up. They can't participate today. It could be nothing more than they're afraid of the repercussions of attending gym. Damage or missing property. So if your kid or student is coming home and they're missing their Chromebook, or they went to school with a certain folder, they're not coming back with it and they lost it. Ask a few questions. Is it just, being a kid, misplacing things? Because I know with 3 kids, that happens to me all the time, but it could be more. Changes in eating habits. Maybe they're not eating at all. Maybe they're eating too much. Skipping meal, binge eatings. Issues with sleep. This is another big one. If you can hear their TV going all night long and that's not normal, or you can hear their cell phone playing TikTok videos at 3 a.m, someone's initiating that, right? So are they waking up in the middle of the night? Are they having trouble sleeping? Are they having bags under their eyes? As a teenager, that's not normal, right? They shouldn't be that tired all the time. Declining grades, loss of interest in schoolwork, subjects they used to love, they hate now. Voluntary courses that maybe they did for a passion purpose are now no longer there. Chorus, band, no one's making them do that, but they loved it, now they don't. Changes in student social life. They used to hang out with a friend all the time. Now they don't see him anymore. We could look at that as like a natural maturation and they just moved on. Or is there something going on with that friends group? Hopelessness or decreased self-esteem. They used to seem so happy-go-lucky, didn't care what they wear. Now they're just being body conscious. Maybe they don't feel like they're ever good enough and you're noticing those things. Sometimes that's just going through puberty, figuring it out. You have those awkward phases. Other times it could be something more behind it. Self-destructive behavior, such as running away from home, harming themselves, or talking about suicide. The running away from home doesn't have to be packing a bag and leaving. It could be I'm not coming home when I'm supposed to be. I want to stay at my friend's house. I call that like running away without running away. I'm asking Friday night, can I sleep over this person's house? Now, Saturday, I haven't come home yet, haven't changed my clothes, but I'm saying, can I stay another night? So you're staying prolonged periods of time away from home because maybe dealing with the people at home who are going to ask you these types of questions is more difficult for you. Then some prevention things, education, help teach kids what bullying can do and the impact it has on others. Ensure that kids understand that bullying behavior is unacceptable. So one of the things that we try to do at the school that I'm at is make sure that kids understand if they are being bullied, they can come and say something and we'll try to put a stop to it as soon as we possibly can. Making sure they understand though they have to say something because it is oftentimes hard to tell if one student is having an issue or multiple students unless they come and tell you. Know the difference between normal conflicts and bullying. That's educating the kids on knowing, but not everyone's going to like you. That doesn't mean it's bullying. we have this perception that everyone's friends. And, you hear it starting in elementary school all the way up is we call each other friends when we're talking in elementary. But that's not the real world, right? We're not all friends. We don't have to be friends, but we do have to be civil and get along with each other and make sure that when we're talking, we're not hurting each other's feelings, and that it's okay to not necessarily like someone, but that you don't have to go out of your way to let them know that. And that's kind of the difference. Help them develop healthy coping mechanisms. Instead of cutting, let's write in a journal. Let's talk about it. Let's talk to your grandmother, your favorite friend, one of those things, and make sure they understand that they can do that. Communication, ensuring you have open lines of communication with your children or students, encouraging teachers to ask how a kid's day was. I had Don Schilmet come to our school, who's a threat assessment safety guy. And one of the things he mentioned was trying to have each kid have 4 points of contact before they even start their day. That first point of contact could be their parents. Hey, you're gonna have a great day today. That next point of contact might be me standing at the door. Good morning, how you doing? Using their first name. If they're in sports, asking them, how did it go last night? Then it's the administrator standing there asking, how's your day? What's going on? And then if that teacher kind of has ownership of the hallway before the kid walks into the class and says, hey, it's going to be a great day today. Hey, you ready for today? Even those little acknowledgments, that 4 points of contact, 4 people before you even started your first day or first thing of the day have already asked you how it's going to be. How could it be bad after that, right? So keeping that line of communication open, and then encouraging them to continue doing the things that they love. That doesn't mean forcing them to do things they hate, but if they used to love softball and they suddenly don't, hey, want to go play catch? Like, you don't have to keep playing for the team, but let's keep it going and try to inspire them to do it. People tend to, have different hobbies over time, but to just drastically stop doing something is not a normal behavior, unless it's exercise, and then you might just stop. So observing, this is the big thing, making sure you don't get so wrapped up in yourself that you're not looking around at others. Okay, we tend to be in our bubble. Keep your eyes open. See if you're seeing that change in behavior. You know your kids, you know your students. You see the kids in school every day, the kids who act a certain way. Little changes in appearance. Did you notice that kid's wearing the same hoodie for the 4th day in a row today? Same pants, same shoes, that maybe are falling apart and a little beat up. Those kind of things matter, and they can lead to additional conversations. It's not always bullying. Sometimes it's, hey, our washing machine broke. Oh, can we launder those clothes for you? We offer those services to kids who need them at the school. At least on our smaller level, we're able to do that. So noticing that, though, can help. And it gives them a place where they know people care. And then model positive behavior. It starts with us. If we are treating people with respect and we are acting appropriately and we are showing them how to work through conflicts, they'll learn how to do it. Kids, model your behavior. Okay.
I guess I'll just add, a lot of our students in Batavia do come from lower income houses. So a lot of, I think, that support at home, we do see missing. I know we've had situations too, where we've washed clothes for kids. We do what's called like the backpack program, where we'll send, resources home with the kids, but it is falling, I think, more on our older kids. We are noticing a much, less interaction with the parents. Those are the parents that stop showing up for the parent teacher conferences. They're not coming to the family nights, not showing up to the open houses. So I think it makes it even more important at school, because we tend to be the only consistent people in their lives. Right before breaks is usually, at least in my experience, the week before break is always one of the worst weeks of the school, because you have a lot of kids who really start acting up because they don't want to go home. They are home for a week straight with no structure. They, at least when they're at school, they know they're guaranteed breakfast. They know they're guaranteed lunch. Even if they arrive late at school, if the child tells someone that they didn't get breakfast that morning, somebody can grab them a Pop-Tart, grab them something to eat. So they'll always be taken care of. Whereas at home, mom might not have showed up the past 2 days, and their middle school brother is in charge of taking care of them for those 2 days until she gets back. Neighbors aren't always on good terms. We have some neighborhoods that just don't get along. In the wintertime too, it's colder outside. Everybody's packed and inside. But I think the structure at home falling apart can definitely lead to a lot of this stuff. So it is even more important to be observant when you have contact with those kids.
There's a ton of kids in this county, unfortunately, that are food dependent on the schools. And you'll notice that when snack is offered, they're not eating it right at that moment. They're throwing it in their backpack because they don't know for sure where food's coming from later. At school lunches, they're taking the extras from kids. If it's pre-wrapped products, they're throwing it in their backpack, those kind of things. So then when you're trying to explain to them how important math is that day, it's very difficult. And then when you're trying to explain to them how they need to resolve issues with their peers in a responsible way, it's very difficult. So breaking through those barriers and trying to understand the kid before you're just trying to attack the behavior. Because if you just come at yelling at somebody, they're not going to listen to you. You're just another person adding on to their plate, and they just move on. And it's not just about being able to talk to someone who's been bullying and try to figure out why it's happening on both ends of it. So implement some anti-bullying programs in school. I go through all the elementary school classes with the counselors, and I talk to the kids about bullying and bullying prevention and being good friends during Red Ribbon Week and things like that. We do Rachel's Challenge at my school, which is based off of a family from Columbine, where it's all promoting, self-respect, respecting others, being involved. So there's a number of different programs. I think DARE does a lot with bullying now. So making sure kids have these avenues to learn these coping mechanisms and how to be good citizens. Implement additional policies and procedures. Do more than the minimum. So there's DASA minimums and there's school requirements that they have to do in order to prevent bullying or attempt to prevent bullying, but what other things are they doing? Do you have policies on top of what's required? Whether it be in-school suspensions, lunch detentions, peer mediations, those kind of things. Create an environment conducive to success. Have available mental health resources. I think everyone is struggling with this right now. We have a huge mental health crisis in this country, and we don't have a ton of resources. So making sure that we can try to find the resources for people. Our counselors will try to contact Genesee County Mental Health. If they know of private practice accepting patients, they can refer those. Our social worker will work with them as well. Access to reporting. So the See Something, Say Something program isn't a lot. Ours is on our school apps, so the kids can click on it and report something anonymously to the administrators. But one way we're trying to improve is get that more front facing, more forward, so that parents can also report it, but make sure that the kids actually know it's there. Just having it available, but never telling a kid how to use it doesn't really help them. And then show a genuine interest in the student or child, create a rapport. You don't have to have a rapport with every single kid, but if you have kids that you gravitate towards and that work well with you, find them. There's a survey that they did where they kind of pooled students and said, do you have any adult in this building that you feel you have a connection with? And it was like 50% of the kids couldn't name one person in the building they felt they had a connection with. Then when you did the same survey with teachers, they all had at least one kid. So making sure the kid understands that if you believe you have something in a rapport, that go out of your way to keep building on that. One person can make a difference. And then provide positive outlets for the students, clubs, sports, after school functions. The big thing is clubs. Not every kid is an athlete or wants to be an athlete, wants anything to do with sports, but extra clubs out there, committees, programs they can be involved in, gives them a reason to like school and to be a part of it. So just to wrap things up, bullying can be done through a number of different ways, as we explained. Recognizing the signs of bullying, getting ahead of it can be dramatically impactful. And then creating a positive environment will help prevent bullying from starting in the first place, giving kids the necessary tools they need to stop it. Any questions? All right, thank you very much. Thank you.